The soft glow of golden morning light spilled across the hardwood floor as Emily stretched beneath the linen sheets, unaware that her world was about to shatter. Her phone buzzed once, then again. It was early, too early for anyone to be messaging. She reached for it lazily, eyes still half closed. But when she unlocked the screen and saw the first message, "Thought you should know what your boyfriend's really up to," a chill passed through her veins. Emily opened the attachment. A photo. Her boyfriend Ryan in a bar, lips pressed against another woman's neck, eyes closed, lost in the moment. Her breath hitched. For a second, everything inside her froze. Then came the roaring flood of disbelief, pain and rage. Emily whispered, "No, no, this can't be happening." But it was. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled through more pictures. Different angles, different nights. The same betrayal. The perfect life she thought she had been living, obliterated in seconds. Emily sat in stunned silence, the phone dimming in her hand. Her breath came shallow, barely audible over the sudden silence that pressed against her ears like cotton. The sound of birds outside her window seemed alien now, like a cruel mockery of the happiness she'd felt just yesterday. She looked around her bedroom, once their shared sanctuary, now a graveyard of broken trust. The framed pictures. His hoodie on the chair. The scent of his cologne still in the air. It all made her stomach churn. Emily whispered, "He said he was working late." The betrayal settled deeper in her chest, not like a knife, but like slow poison. She walked toward the mirror, her reflection hollow, the shock leaving her face pale and rigid. It wasn't just the act, it was the lie, the rehearsed stories, the stolen time. This wasn't just heartbreak. It was humiliation. And in that rising pool of grief, something darker stirred. A quiet flame. Not yet revenge, but the seed. Later that morning, Emily sat at the kitchen table, staring into her untouched coffee. The cup steamed, but her hands remained cold. Her phone lay screen down beside her. She hadn't touched it since that first message. Not even when Ryan texted her, "Morning, babe." The audacity. Her jaw clenched as the words replayed in her mind. Had he sent that after cheating? Was she just a safety net? A facade? She opened the message, stared at it, then deleted it without reply. Her mind raced through every moment, every excuse, every lie now seen in brutal clarity. She remembered the canceled dinners, the guys' nights, the sudden need for space. It all made sense now. She clenched her fists, fingernails digging into her palms. Her pain was fresh, but under it, a new awareness simmered. She wouldn't be the crying girl forever. Not after this. The apartment still held the scent of cinnamon candles she had lit the night before. How ironic. The warmest things she created now felt like cruel contrasts. She stood by the living room window, arms folded tightly around herself, watching the world outside move on without her. Strangers walked by. Cars honked. Life continued. But hers had halted. Emily whispered to herself, "How many lies have I believed?" Her voice trembled. The mirror on the wall across from her reflected a woman who looked defeated. But as she stared into her own eyes, a crack appeared in the sorrow. Anger. Raw and pulsing. He didn't just betray her. He wasted her time. He shattered her self-worth. Emily said, "No, this doesn't end like this." She turned sharply and walked to the bedroom. It was time to plan, not cry. She sat at her desk, eyes locked on her laptop screen, typing with laser focus. Her hands no longer shook. The images of Ryan's betrayal were now in a hidden folder, but burned into her mind. Emily began gathering information. Locations. Dates. Social media activity. Every post he made. Every lie he told. If he wanted to live a double life, she would make sure everyone knew both sides. This wasn't rage. It was precision. Cold, methodical. She wasn't going to scream or beg. She was going to dismantle him, quietly, brilliantly. Emily whispered, Let's see how loyal your friends are after this. As the cursor blinked on her draft email, her lips curled into a faint smile. The first layer of revenge had just been born. Emily walked into her office with her head high and emotions buried deep beneath foundation and mascara. Her co-workers greeted her with the usual small talk. Nothing had changed for them, but everything had shifted for her. She sat at her desk, fingers moving across her keyboard, responding to emails, but her mind was far from spreadsheets and reports. Olivia leaned over and whispered, "Roan night." Emily forced a laugh. Didn't sleep much. She wasn't lying. But it wasn't exhaustion from work. It was the weight of betrayal growing heavier by the hour. Her phone vibrated. A message from Ryan. "Can't wait to see you tonight." Her eyes locked onto the screen. So casual. So innocent. So calculated. She smiled to herself. Tonight would be different. Tonight, she'd look into the eyes of a liar and record everything. She opened a browser window in private mode and began searching. Not just for evidence, but for truth. Chloe's name surfaced quickly. Tagged photos, Instagram stories, comments that had seemed random before now screamed significance. Emily followed every trail. Chloe and Ryan's hoodie. Chloe, in front of a hotel she'd once been told was for a work trip by Chu. Her stomach churned, but her face remained still. She cross-checked dates with Ryan's calendar. His lies were neatly packaged, but no lie is perfect. And she found them, tiny cracks. She started a spreadsheet, dates, alibis, images. Piece by piece, a puzzle emerged. This wasn't obsession. This was justice with timestamps. She whispered to herself, "You hid her well, Ryan, but not well enough." That evening, Emily stood in front of her mirror, the soft buzz of a voice recorder activating from inside her clutch. She didn't wear anger. She wore elegance. A black satin dress. Pearl earrings. Crimson lips. She applied her eyeliner slowly, the brush gliding across her lash line like a blade being drawn. "Let him lie," she said softly. "I'm listening this time." Her reflection didn't flinch. She didn't look broken anymore. She looked sharp. Intentional. She wasn't going to confront him tonight. She would study him, document his expressions, his deflections. This wasn't about catching him. He'd already been caught. This was about letting him dig his own grave, one lie at a time. As she zipped the dress, she whispered, "Showtime." The restaurant glowed with amber light and the hum of clinking glasses. Ryan sat across from her, relaxed, smiling, unaware. "You look beautiful," he said. Emily smiled softly. "You always say the right things." She watched every flicker in his eyes, every pause between his words. "So, last Friday?" she asked casually. "You said you were with James." Ryan blinked, then nodded. "Yeah, his kid was sick, needed help." She stirred her drink. "Sweet of you." Her tone was honey, her face serene. But her phone was recording beneath the napkin. She didn't push. She let him wrap himself in lies, watched as his mask stayed perfect. "We should get away soon," he added. "Just us." Emily leaned closer. "We will," she said with a smile. "Soon." In the restroom, Emily stared at her reflection beneath the pale fluorescent lights. Her hands rested on the edge of the sink, knuckles white. She'd recorded every word. The lie about James. The nonchalant tone. The charm. All of it. She took a deep breath, then pulled out her phone, saving the file under "Dinner Lies," confirm. Her lipstick was still flawless. Her poise, unshaken. She reapplied a hint of perfume, looked herself in the mirror, and whispered, "He thinks I'm still his." She tucked the phone into her clutch and smiled. Not the fake smile she gave Ryan, but the one she gave herself. The one that said, "I'm not breaking. I'm baiting." Then she turned and walked out, heels echoing confidently as the next stage began. Emily stood outside Ryan's apartment, eyes fixed on the second-floor window glowing faintly behind the curtain. She didn't ring the bell. She wasn't there to confront. She was there to observe. She had told him she was working late tonight. Instead, she parked across the street, her engine off, darkness cloaking her like a second skin. At 9:03 p.m., a cab pulled up. Chloe stepped out. Emily didn't blink. She simply raised her phone, began recording as Chloe walked up the steps and rang the bell. A moment later, the door opened. Ryan's silhouette greeted her with a hug, too intimate to mistake. Emily felt the rage pulse through her veins, but she held it. No tears. No noise. Just footage. At 9:11, the lights in the living room dimmed. Emily tapped "Stop recording" and whispered, "Got you." The next morning, Emily sat at her kitchen table again, but this time, her coffee was untouched because her hands were busy editing. She uploaded last night's video, trimmed it, zoomed in where it mattered. The hug. The door closing behind them. The timestamp. She added screenshots, captions, context. This wasn't just documentation anymore. It was a dossier. A quiet manifesto of deceit. She didn't plan to post it, yet. But she was building something. A case. An irrefutable account of betrayal that no sweet words or tears could erase. Every lie he told had a footprint. And she was collecting them all. A knock at the door startled her. It was Olivia. "Just wanted to check on you," she said. Emily smiled, closed the laptop, and replied, "I'm good, better actually." And oddly, she meant it. Emily met Chloe in person 3 days later, by accident, or so it seemed. A chance encounter at a local boutique. Emily had tracked her habits, and Chloe loved this place. She approached her with a smile, pretending to browse. "That color looks great on you," Emily said. Chloe turned, smiled, thanked her. They chatted. Casual, warm, disarming. Emily introduced herself as Emma. Chloe never suspected a thing. She mentioned Ryan offhandedly. "My boyfriend's always late," she joked. Emily smiled and replied, "Men, what can you do?" Inside, every word Chloe spoke tightened a screw in Emily's mind. She was sweet. Too sweet. Maybe she didn't even know. Or maybe she did. Either way, it didn't matter. Emily walked out of the boutique with a new dress and a tighter grip on her revenge. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan rotating slowly above her. Her mind swirled with images, Ryan's smile, Chloe's laugh, her own reflection faking normalcy. Was she losing herself in this? She sat up, wrapped herself in a blanket, and walked to the balcony. The city lights twinkled like distant secrets. She whispered to the night, "What if I don't recognize who I'm becoming?" But even that fear couldn't stop her. Not now. She was in too deep. Her heart ached, but her focus sharpened. She realized revenge wasn't turning her into someone else. It was revealing who had been hidden all along. The part of her that refused to be fooled. That demanded justice. That would not apologize for choosing herself. Emily opened her email. Not her main one, her burner. She composed a message and attached a folder titled, "You Deserve to Know." Inside were the videos, screenshots, and voice recordings. But she wasn't sending it to Ryan. Not yet. This one was addressed to Chloe. She hesitated before typing the subject line. After a breath, she wrote, "Truth, because you're not the only one." She didn't send it, just saved it to drafts. The time wasn't right. But it would be. Soon. She stared at the draft screen, her finger hovering over the send button like a weapon's trigger. Her expression unreadable. Calm. Collected. The kind of calm that comes before a storm. Emily whispered, "One more lie, Ryan. Just one more." Then she closed the laptop, stood tall, and left the room without looking back. Emily sat alone at a crowded cafe, sunlight dancing through the windows but failing to reach her. Her hands gripped a cup of tea she hadn't touched. Across the room, couples laughed, friends chatted. It all felt foreign now, this normalcy. Her world had fractured into shadows. She had become obsessed with the evidence, with watching Chloe's posts, checking Ryan's patterns, gathering more than she needed. It was no longer about catching him. She had already done that. It was about control, about making sure he could never lie to anyone again. But as she stared into the swirl of untouched tea, a bitter thought surfaced. What if she was losing herself? What if her obsession was its own prison? She blinked hard. No, she wasn't the villain. She was the consequence. The one they never expected. That night, the storm inside Emily finally broke. She lay on her bathroom floor, sobs racking her body in silence. Her phone lay on the tile beside her, the screen still glowing with Chloe's latest post. Ryan's arm around her, caption that read, "Love always wins." Emily didn't scream. She didn't smash anything. The grief was too deep, too cold. She whispered, "He really thinks he's untouchable." Tears blurred her vision, but her thoughts were razor sharp. Every lie he told, every excuse she accepted, every moment she blamed herself. They all echoed now. This wasn't heartbreak anymore. It was erosion. And she had reached bedrock. From here, she could only build something new. Something stronger. She rose slowly, wiping her tears. The old Emily had died on that floor. And the woman who stood up was someone Ryan had never met. The next morning, Emily opened a private journal for the first time in months. Not to write about love. To write a blueprint. She titled the page, Phase 2. Her pen scratched across the paper with purpose. Names. Contacts. Timelines. Secrets Ryan had shared in trust. She listed them all. It wasn't petty. It was surgical. Strategic. Mall. Ruthless. Her emotions were gone now, locked away behind layers of clarity. She didn't want closure. She wanted collapse. And she knew where to press. His company. His boss. The girlfriend he claimed he didn't have. Chloe wasn't the enemy anymore. She was a pawn. Emily's hand stopped mid-sentence. She took a deep breath. Then kept writing. He built his world on lies, she thought. I'll burn it down with truth. Later that day, Emily met Ryan for lunch. He smiled like nothing had changed. He talked about work, his gym routine, even complimented her new lipstick. "You always know how to pull me back," he said. Emily tilted her head, smiled, and replied, "Do I?" She watched him sip his wine, his eyes relaxed, unaware he was being dissected. She asked vague questions, just to hear his lies again. He didn't disappoint. When the server came to clear their plates, Ryan leaned in and said, "I'm glad we're okay." Emily stared at him, holding her smile like a knife. "Of course we are," she said. In that moment she realized something important. He didn't know her at all. And by the time he figured it out, it would be far too late. That evening, Emily stood at her bedroom window, watching the city flicker to life beneath a darkening sky. Her face reflected in the glass looked unfamiliar, still her, but reassembled. She opened her phone and reread the message she had drafted to Chloe. Her finger hovered again. But instead of sending, she took a new step. She opened Ryan's email account. He had once saved the login on her laptop. She logged in. It worked. Her pulse didn't quicken. Her conscience didn't stir. She found messages. Hidden ones. Photos. Plans. Flirtations from others too. More than Chloe. She laughed, quietly, bitterly. He had no idea how much he'd underestimated her. She began forwarding everything, to herself, to Chloe, to his boss. The avalanche had begun. Emily didn't sleep that night. Not because of fear, but clarity. At 2:14 a.m., a name appeared in Ryan's inbox that made her freeze. Sophie C. The subject read, "Still thinking about that weekend." Emily clicked. The thread wasn't new. It stretched back months. Sophie wasn't just a fling, she was a second life. There were plane tickets, hotel bookings, love letters. Emily read each one with a detached calm, like a surgeon diagnosing cancer. He hadn't just lied, he had orchestrated an entire world behind her back. Chloe wasn't the only one. She wasn't even the main one. Emily whispered, "You weren't just a cheat, you were a collector." And suddenly it clicked. Ryan didn't cheat to escape her. He cheated because he thrived in duplicity. It wasn't about love. It was about power. Emily stood in front of her closet, a single thought pulsing through her mind. Weaponize the truth. She pulled out a box, one Ryan had long forgotten. Inside were receipts, birthday cards, photos of them at events he claimed he never attended. She wasn't just angry now, she was strategic. She layered it all onto a timeline. Cross-referenced dates with Chloe's posts and Sophie's emails. The lies overlapped like clockwork. She organized them into a digital file. The double lie. Not just for Chloe. Not just for Sophie. But for everyone who had ever believed his mask. She whispered, "Let them see what I've seen." Her revenge wasn't rage, it was transparency. The one thing Ryan could never survive. 3 days later, Emily sent the file anonymously. One to Chloe. One to Sophie. One to Ryan's workplace, HR, inbox. She didn't sign her name. She didn't need to. Truth had its own signature. That night, she received a single reply, from Sophie. "Thank you. I had no idea. I thought I was the only one." Emily stared at the message for a long time. She hadn't expected gratitude. But it stirred something in her. Beneath the rage and vengeance, there was a woman who still cared about other women. Not because they were rivals, but because they were collateral. She whispered, "We were never the problem. He was." And for the first time in weeks, she let herself breathe deeply. The next day, Ryan called her. 5 times. She didn't answer. The 6th time, she picked up. His voice was shaky, panicked. "What did you do?" Emily didn't shout. She didn't gloat. She said, "I told the truth, something you never did." Silence crackled on the line. Then a pathetic defense. "You're ruining my life." Emily's tone stayed flat. "No, Ryan. You ruined your life. I just showed people the footage." He begged. Pleaded. She hung up. No screaming. No drama. Just silence. That was her revenge, the absence of her pain. The denial of his control. As she placed her phone on the table and walked away, she didn't cry. She didn't smile either. She was done giving him any emotion. That was her power now. Later that evening, Emily sat by herself at a rooftop bar. No friends. No distractions. Just a glass of wine and the horizon stretching before her. It wasn't celebration. It was release. She had done what most wouldn't dare. She hadn't screamed or smashed windows. She had dismantled a manipulator with evidence and silence. The sky turned to velvet, stars peeking through. For the first time in a long while, the air felt lighter. Not because she was healed, but because she was free of the weight of lies. A waiter walked by and asked, "Waiting for someone?" Emily smiled softly and said, "No, just me." And she meant it. The war was over. The ashes weren't his. They were hers. And from them, something new would rise. Emily entered the gallery opening with quiet poise. She wore a backless navy dress, her hair swept up, every movement intentional. The space buzzed with art collectors, media, and yes, Ryan. He was there, laughing too loudly, wine in hand, arm around Chloe. Emily moved through the crowd, unnoticed, until she reached the main installation. Titled Fidelity, a study in duplicity. It featured a series of framed images, emails, texts, blurred just enough to protect the innocent, but clear enough to indict the guilty. The guests paused. Whispered. Ryan stared in horror. One image showed him with Chloe. Another with Sophie. Then another. His voice faltered. What the hell is this? Emily didn't flinch. She simply took a sip of champagne and said, "Truth, on display." The room froze. Justice had gone public, and there was no walking it back. Fallout began instantly. Guests whispered his name like it was venom. Chloe backed away from him slowly, her face white with humiliation. Sophie had come too, invited anonymously. She turned and walked out without a word. Ryan lunged toward Emily, voice tight and low. "You set this up?" She looked at him calmly. "I revealed what you tried to hide." He laughed bitterly. "You're insane." Emily's smile was razor thin. "No, I'm meticulous." He turned, trying to salvage his dignity, but the room had already turned its back. It wasn't rage that followed him, it was silence. The kind of silence that comes when truth has been spoken so clearly, it drowns out excuses. Emily didn't follow him. She didn't need to. The gallery walls spoke louder than she ever could. Back home, Emily removed her heels and stood barefoot in the silence. Her heart beat steady, not from adrenaline, but from relief. She wasn't trembling. She wasn't doubting. She had done it. Not just exposed him, but dismantled the illusion. No yelling, no threats. Just carefully placed truth. She walked to the kitchen, poured herself a glass of water, and opened her laptop. Her inbox flooded with messages, from strangers, women thanking her, people sharing their own stories of betrayal. She hadn't expected that. She had sought revenge, but found resonance. Emily leaned back, eyes closed, a faint smile curling at the edge of her lips. Maybe this wasn't just an ending. Maybe it was a beginning. The kind built not on pain but on truth. The next morning, Emily received an email with a subject line that stopped her. Public apology. It was from Ryan. A long, rambling letter full of half-sincere remorse and empty justifications. He blamed childhood wounds. Stress. What? Loneliness. Anything but himself. He ended it with, "Maybe one day you'll forgive me." Emily read it once. Then again. And then, without hesitation, she deleted it. No response. No reply. That was the most powerful sentence she could write. Silence. She didn't owe him forgiveness. He had written his own ending. She had simply added punctuation. She stood, stepped into the morning sun flooding her apartment and whispered, "I forgive myself. That's enough." That afternoon, Emily returned to the rooftop bar, not to revisit the past, but to reclaim her peace. She sat at the same table, ordered the same wine. But this time, she brought a notebook. Not for revenge. For dreams. Ideas. Plans untouched by heartbreak. The sun hovered low, casting the city in amber light. A couple sat nearby laughing. For once it didn't sting. It felt distant. She opened her notebook, wrote the words, "My story begins here." The waitress returned and smiled. "Alone again?" Emily looked up and answered with certainty, "No, I'm with myself." There was no war left to fight. No mask to wear. The world had seen the truth, and so had she. And that was the real victory. Weeks passed. The chaos faded. People moved on, but Emily remained changed. She found peace in the smallest things again. The way her tea curled in steam. The feel of a book in her hands, the comfort of waking up alone without explanation. Her revenge wasn't the gallery or the silence. It was this freedom. No more pretending. No more being gaslit, questioned, or made to feel less. She didn't track Ryan anymore. She didn't look for Chloe or Sophie. They were chapters. She was the book. One morning, she stepped onto her balcony with bare feet and open palms, the wind brushing against her face like a promise. This wasn't the beginning of her healing. It was the middle of it. And the middle was steady. Beautiful. Quietly triumphant. Emily met someone new at the bookstore. It wasn't a spark. It wasn't fate. Just a conversation over shared interest in poetry. They talked, laughed softly. He asked her to coffee. She said no. Maybe and a wall tree. She would rand about all. Not because she wasn't interested, but because she wasn't ready. And that was okay. She didn't need a new love story to complete her. She had learned to be her own ending. When she left the store, she smiled to herself, not because of him, but because of who she was now. She wasn't defined by what had been done to her. She was defined by how she chose to rise from it. And rise she did. Ryan's name came up in a conversation one afternoon. A friend asked, "Did you ever hear from him again?" Emily paused, thought about it. "Once," she said. He emailed a few months later. Just said, "I hope you're doing well." The friend waited, curious. Emily just smiled. "I never opened it." And that was the truth. Not because it hurt. Because it didn't matter anymore. She had released it all. His apology. His chaos. His weight. She was no longer the girl crying in the bathroom, or the woman planning digital revenge. She was simply herself, strong, healed, and done. The final door had closed, and she didn't look back to check if it locked. That night, Emily revisited the rooftop bar, not for symbolism but for herself. She ordered tea this time, not wine. She sat at the farthest table, pulled out her notebook, and began to write, not about betrayal, but about vision, dreams, purpose. For the first time, the page filled with things unrelated to heartbreak. She didn't need closure anymore. She had clarity. She wrote, "I gave him silence. I gave myself peace." As the wind swept her hair back and the city glowed beneath her, she smiled. Not for show, but for herself. Because the best revenge wasn't just showing the world who he really was. It was showing herself who she had always been. Emily closed the notebook, stood, and walked to the edge of the rooftop. Below, the world moved as it always had, cars honking, people rushing, lights flickering on and off. But she stood still, completely still. She whispered, "This is where I leave him behind." There was no music swelling, no dramatic monologue. Just a woman, whole again. The revenge was done. The healing had begun. The camera didn't follow her down the stairs. It stayed on the rooftop as she turned her back to the skyline, placed a final sticky note on the last page, not his story anymore. And as the wind carried her hair one last time, the screen faded to black. No explosion. No applause. Just silence. And it was deafening.